So the last Big Finish audio review that I did was of the Sixth Doctor story, The Spectre of Lanyon Moor, which I enjoyed very much so because it was a meeting of the Brigadier and the Sixth Doctor, who never got a meeting on screen. Now, since the Seventh Doctor did get a meeting with the Brigadier in the 1980s story Battlefield, I began to wonder if the Eighth Doctor had ever encountered him. Well, thankfully he did, and that's actually the next story on the list. I mean, the last Eighth Doctor story I reviewed was The Stones of Venice, so the next one up is actually the Brigadier story, which I actually really like. The 19th Big Finish audio release was called Minuet in Hell, was released in 4 parts on CD and download on the 23rd of April 2001. In the story, the year is 2003, and Malabolgia has just been announced as the 51st US state. The Brigadier, voiced once again by Nicholas Courtney, has been invited along to check out the political climate and make sure everything is kind of up to date. To which he ends up majorly investigating 2 places within Malabolgia itself, one being the Hellfire Club and the other being the Dashwood Institute. Now, Malabolgia is about to have its kind of big elections to choose its next leader of state, and the 2 people who are mostly in line for it are TV evangelist Brigham Eliza Dashwood III, voiced by Robert Jerzyk, and Senator Waldo Pickering, voiced by Morgan Deere. However, not everything is as it seems, as Dashwood is head not just of this political party, and also being a TV evangelist, but he's also head of the Dashwood Institute, a kind of new psychiatric hospital where they've managed to create new technology that supposedly can remove a human brain, extract kind of the mind from it, operate on it, and then put it back, which is rather sinister in its own right. But he is also kind of leader of the Hellfire Club, a club that, how best to explain it, it deals very much in the kind of sexist undertones that you would expect of such a gentleman's establishment. I think, similar to the club in Phantasmagoria, it's mainly where kind of men can beat up and leer at women and ultimately treat them like second-class citizens, which, yeah, isn't exactly good. I mean, I can't speak that much for American politics, and to be honest, I don't really want to on this channel. I try to avoid politics as much as I can, but I feel like Dashwood in this story is very much the cliche of the evangelist politician, the person who believes that everything he's doing, no matter how horrible, is all good and all okay because it's being done for God, and the like. But that's not the only person who the Brigadier encounters, because it turns out the Eighth Doctor and Charlie are also roped into this, as on one of their most recent adventures, they decided to finally release their kind of pets, Ramsay, who they'd been caring for since Storm Warning, back into the Time Vortex to allow it to live its life. However, upon landing, they somehow get, well, put a little bit out of sorts, causing both of them to experience minor amnesia. The Doctor ends up in the Dashwood Institute, and Charlie ends up in the Hellfire Club. While at the Hellfire Club, she endears herself to another girl there named Becky Lee Kowalczyk, voiced by Helen Goldwyn, who is secretly a member of the Order of St. Peter, a kind of resistance movement against Dashwood, and she's looking for anything she can find on there. Meanwhile, the Doctor ends up in the Dashwood Institute, and he meets a man in there who neither of them have any identification, and they've named the other man John Doe and have named the Doctor Zebediah Doe, just to be able to tell them apart. However, the Dashwood Institute continues to do their experiments, and it eventually comes to a point where the other man, this John Doe, believes himself to be the Doctor. And while the Doctor is continually trying to prove to himself that he is the Doctor, even he becomes less and less sure as the story goes on. Now, the other 2 characters who are the other 3 characters in here that are probably important are a doctor who works at the Dashwood Institute named Dr. Dale Pargeter, voiced by Maureen Oakley, and, of course, the other man, who turns out is actually a man called Gideon Crane, voiced by Nicholas Briggs. And the story is very much the Doctor trying to escape, trying to endear himself to everyone, and even trying to team up with the Brigadier in order to get out of the Dashwood Institute. Meanwhile, Charlie is trying to find a way to get out of the Hellfire Club. However, it turns out that things are a bit more complicated, as Dashwood has allied himself with creatures that he calls demons. Like, he believes he's summoned demons, he's summoned devils, and mainly one called Marcosius, who he aims to use in order to ensure his political future. But it turns out that Marcosius isn't actually a demon, he's actually a creature known as a sonivore. Sonivore, I meant to say. And they're very much creatures who, tell me if you've heard this one before, feed on emotion and aims to cause chaos and feed on people's emotions. And I have to admit, they've got a very good voice for him. Also, I do like the meeting late on in the story. It takes very late on this time around compared to the Spectre of Lanyon Moor for the Brigadier to finally realise that the Doctor is actually the Doctor. Like, when Charlie finally gets back there and the Brigadier finds the man who he thought was the Doctor, who's actually Gideon Crane, dead, he's like, oh dear, the poor fellow's dead. I must begin to like him. To which the Doctor then shows up and goes, I'm beginning to feel quite offended, Brigadier. It's like, what, Doctor? What, hang on, no, but, oh, that is the Doctor. Oh, okay, fair enough. Good to see you again, old friend. But I love in each incarnation of the Doctor, you do get that moment with the Brigadier where you can tell they're old friends for a while, and even though the Brigadier is older, he still does recognise his old friend, and it is nice to see. I am aware that the 9th Doctor did actually get a meeting with the Brigadier as well in Big Finish. I haven't listened to that one yet. I may get around to it at some point. I hope to. But yeah, it is always nice to see them. And I do like some of the tricks that the Brigadier uses. Like when they're going down to a TV station to stop Dashwood from broadcasting his plea to become the next big politician, the Brigadier soonly suffers health problems with his heart and asks to be taken away somewhere to sit down, but then he ultimately is the one to stop Dashwood's communications. Not so much stop them as he broadcasts what Dashwood actually thinks of the American people, with Dashwood continually insulting them and calling them sheep, effectively. Which was like, yes, good, and the people have all heard that, so it's like, how's the heart, Brigadier? Strong as ever, Doctor. And I do love it. I do also love the ending, where Charlie goes back to the TARDIS and then the two of them just get to have a minute just to catch up on old times, realise that, please try and look after this body compared to your predecessors. And just both of them depart knowing that they've pretty much got to go because otherwise they'll be questioned. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think the story is a little bit of a mess. I don't know if it's as good as the Spectre of Lanyon Moor, but you know what? It's still a good one, and a Dr. Brigadier story, how can you really complain? So yeah, I'd say Minuet in Hell, not quite as good as the Spectre of Lanyon Moor, but still a pretty good story. Anyway, I have seen some people who didn't like this story, but I thought it was pretty good. So there you go, there's my quick thoughts on the Doctor Who Big Finish story, Minuet in Hell. Until next time, see ya.